Welcome back again to Mother Africa. I've named this channel Mother Africa, which shows my love and my passion, my commitment to the continent of Africa as much as I'd loved my mother. So if you also love Mother Africa, this beautiful continent of ours, please consider subscribing to this channel so that you and I we can build this community. I am a very passionate student of Kwame Nkrumah. I like reading his writings. I'm reading one of his books, Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. This is the book that I'm reading, so I'll be sharing some snippets from that book, some quotations. The one that I'm building this video from reads, Africa is clearly fragmented into too many small and economic and non-viable states, many of whom are having a very hard struggle to survive. Africa should be a country. Before we were divided, before the Europeans came to Africa and divided us, we only knew of kings and kingdoms, and we were together as a continent. Africans lived together. Africans were one. There was love. Even if you travel, if you read your history, if you travel from one kingdom to another, you will be received with respect and dignity. Now that we have been divided into these little countries that are not even worth being countries, some of these little villages that we have no business in being called sovereign countries. If you look at the Lesothos, the Swazilands, and the Burundis, these little villages have no business in becoming sovereign states. But because of the colonial history, we were divided, and because of the selfishness of some of our leaders. That's why the division continued, because we are selfish. We think of ourselves. We think of what will be of me if I were to lose my presidency, or the chance of me to lead a country and enjoy the benefits of being a leader. But we are forgetting the consequences of remaining divided like this are dire. And of course, we can see it. Africa, like what Kwame Nkrumah said long back then in 1965, that Africa is too fragmented into small little countries that cannot survive economically, that cannot fend for themselves, they cannot protect themselves. Then hence makes it difficult for Africa to develop. If you look at the global economy today, look, the giants, the big countries are the ones who are leading. Look at the United States of America, look at Russia, look at China. These countries are so huge to the point that we can consider them as continents on themselves. I mean, China is 1.4 billion people. China has the same population as Africa. India has the same population as Africa. But Africa is fragmented into 54 countries. But 1.4 billion China, 1.4 billion India. These are countries. If you look at if you add up the GDP of Africa together for 2024 was $2.8 trillion. If we combine the total GDP of Africa together to 2.8 trillion, and we take the total GDP of the United States of America, which was about 28 trillion US dollars, which is 10 times larger than that of Africa combined. Africa cannot compete in the world economy like that. As underdeveloped as Africa is. Africa is punching way below her weight, given the circumstances that all the natural resources, the majority of the natural resources that these countries require to produce come from Africa. We cannot begin to match Malawi. We cannot begin to match Burundi. We cannot begin to match Swaziland with the United States of America. If Africa combined, its total GDP is 10 times less than of the United States of America. What about a little Burundi? What about a little Mozambique, who has a GDP of about 10 billion US dollars? How can you compete in the global marketplace like that? The world has become globalized. Competition has become globalized. So you, as a country, when you are producing whatever you're producing, you are met with competition on the global scale. And then how can we expect African countries, those little villages that we have kept on calling countries, how can they participate in with such huge and enormous economies like that? In terms of land mass, Russia has more than half of Africa's land area, which is about 30 million square kilometers. Russia is about 17 million square kilometers, and America is about 9 point something million square kilometers, same as China. And these are huge countries. These are continents in themselves. If you look at the United States of America, literally, if they were of the same mind as us as Africans, they would have 50 separate countries. They have combined all these states, and they run as a country. Some of the states alone in the United States of America are bigger than some of the majority of African countries. Their GDPs or their economies are bigger than the majority of countries in Africa. What are we doing? How can we expect Africa to develop in such a manner when it is fragmented and divided into small countries like that? On the 2.8 trillion total GDP of Africa, if you look in deep into the numbers, that GDP belongs to a few countries in the top five: South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria. Those are the few countries that have the biggest GDP. The rest of these countries that follow are nothing. They cannot be counted. I've heard people complaining when Donald Trump said he doesn't know a country called Lesotho. Yes, of course. It's such a little country of no significance in the world. How do you expect to compete on the global marketplace, which is so tough as it is today, at that scale with a GDP of $2.8 billion? You are a company. You are a village, not a country. But because of selfish reasons, we want to maintain these sovereign states. And also, not only are we talking about Africa being fragmented being the problem, but also on the other scale, we are failing to develop ourselves as Africa. Because if you think about it, no matter how huge we are, no matter how big Africa is, with such a big population of about 1.4 billion, 1.5 billion people, our economy, our total GDP is still smaller than that of Germany. It's still smaller than that of the United Kingdom. Think about it. With 1.5 billion, these other countries, Germany and United Kingdom, they have only about the populations of about 50 million, 60 million people. But how is Africa supposed to survive with 1.5 billion people only with a total GDP of 2.8? And the biggest challenge that we have, we know very well what we are supposed to be doing in order to solve our problems as Africans. But the problem is we are not doing anything about it. Everybody, you and I, we can get to a point, except for a few nationalists, especially of those who are in countries that seem to be doing well in Africa, such as South Africa. We can argue why that is, but except for those few, you and I would agree that we have to unite as a continent in order for us to develop anything of significance in the world. Africa needs to come together so that we can have a significant voice, so that we can have an impact in the world, so that when we go to the world marketplace, we can have bargaining power, we can set prices. If everything is done together and we set policies for Africa together, then we would develop all these things that are happening in Africa, the manipulation of our politics, the manipulation of our currencies, the continuous interference by the West in Africa, the looting of minerals in Africa, the conflicts that are ever unending in Africa. All these things can be handled better when we together as a continent. If Africa's resources are brought together in fighting all these problems, it will be better. But if Congo wants to stand on her own and try to defend herself, then she cannot defend herself. Africa does not stand together in one voice in setting policies in how we interact with the world. The Chinese comes to Africa and goes to Zimbabwe. It's met with different policies there. It goes to South Africa, there are different policies there. It goes to different countries. where there is more corruption, where the leaders do not care about their own people. They just do shenanigans deals, and they go. They take all the resources that they want and go away with no benefit or no real significant impact to Africa. If Africa was together as a country, a United States of Africa, we would speak in one voice. When we say this is how we're gonna do business with Chinese, this is how we're gonna do business with Europe, this is how we're gonna treat the United States of America when they come to us. And the United States of America and these other countries, knowing that they need Africa, they need our natural resources, they would listen and they would understand whatever demands that we make, the prices and the conditions that we would set. But as it stands now, they know if Zimbabwe doesn't want to export their products at a certain price, they don't have to listen. They would just go to an alternative country in Africa, which is gonna let them do whatever they wanna do. And then we all lose at the end of the day, because that other country agrees to sell at a lower price. It gains nothing. The other country has been left out. It gains nothing. But us as Africans, we need to come together and start speaking in one voice and unite and start solving problems, African problems together. And we are so reluctant in helping and supporting each other when we find ourselves in problems. But if Africa was the United States of America, we can have all these little countries, these 54 countries, become states which can govern themselves. But ultimately, we should have a governing body, a parliament of Africa, which is overseeing everything that is happening within the continent, such as what Europe did. It's not like we have to copy everything that they did, but we can build something of our own that would save Africa. The only challenge, once again, that we have in Africa is leadership, is the people that are in power, the people that are in control of making these decisions. They are not pushing for it. They are not advocating for this unity that is needed for Africa to go forward. Remember, think about it. Why the Chinese companies succeed regardless of the pressure from the world is because back home they have already a market for them, for their products, which is about 1.4 1.5 billion people already within their economies. So when they start at home manufacturing their products, they know they already have a guaranteed market for about 1.4 billion people. They already become billion-dollar companies within their own countries, which is going to make it easy for them to expand to outside. So if Africa unites and becomes one country, and we set policies for Africa, for the whole continent, and we promote our own indigenous companies, then it is then be guaranteed for our startups that when you start your business, you are going to be promoted within the context of Africa. You already have a ready market for you. Then you can easily go on the global market economy. But it seems like our African leaders don't see it that way. It seems like because they are not affected by the realities that you and I live in. You and I understand that these borders and this division is causing a lot of pain to us. It's keeping us away from achieving our potential. But because our leaders don't care, and our leaders do not want to lose their political influence